The shotgun blast shattered the midnight quiet like God's own thunder, splintering the wooden doorframe inches from Christopher's head. "Get out, you filthy queer, before I paint this porch with your blood," his father's voice roared, slurred with whiskey and hate, the barrel still smoking in the porch light. Christopher bolted into the starlit dust of Juniper Creek, Arizona, heart pounding like a jackhammer, the only home he'd ever known crumbling behind him as the screen door slammed shut forever. Dust devils swirled under the relentless Arizona sun as Christopher Hayes trudged along the cracked asphalt of Route 17, his backpack slung over one shoulder like a noose, heavy with nothing but a change of clothes, a dog-eared copy of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, and the gnawing ache of betrayal. At 22, he'd grown up in this godforsaken speck of a town, Juniper Creek, population 1,247, where the Colorado River's tributaries had long ago turned to whispers and the aquifer below was a myth whispered around campfires. Folks here scraped by on well water and prayers, ranchers herding cattle across brittle scrubland, miners chasing fool's gold in abandoned shafts. Christopher's family had been the backbone. His pa, Harlan Hayes, foreman at the old copper mine, his ma baking pies for church suppers, and his little sister Ellie, who still believed in fairy tales. Until tonight. It started with a kiss. Not some grand declaration, but a stolen moment behind the feed store with Tommy Ruiz, the mechanic's kid with grease-streaked hands and a laugh that could melt barbed wire. They'd been circling each other for months, brushed knuckles over shared beers at the Roadhouse, eyes lingering too long during the 4th of July parade. Tommy had pulled him into the shadows, lips crashing urgent and sweet, tasting of cheap Budweiser and desperation. Christopher had melted into it, the world narrowing to the heat of that touch, until headlights swept the alley like a judgment from on high. Word spread faster than wildfire in August. By dawn, the whole town knew. Harlan had waited until supper, his face carved from granite, knuckles white around his fork. "Heard you been actin' unnatural, boy," he'd growled, Ma's eyes wide with terror across the table. Christopher had tried to explain, not an act, just who he was, carved deep like the canyons outside town, but Harlan's fist had flown before the words landed. Bruises bloomed purple on his ribs, and then the ultimatum: confess to Pastor Hale at Sunday service or pack your bags. He'd chosen the bags. Pride, or maybe just survival. Now, with the sun baking his skin raw, Christopher hitched his thumb out for a ride that never came. Trucks rumbled past, windows down, drivers spitting tobacco juice and averting their eyes. He was the town queer now, marked like Cain, invisible until it suited them to stone him again. By noon, thirst clawed at his throat. He'd filled a canteen before bolting, but the desert didn't care for mercy. He veered off the highway toward the old Hayes Ranch, not to beg forgiveness, but to check the windmill out back, the one Pa had jury-rigged from scrap when the main well went dry last spring. Creaked in the breeze, blades slicing lazy arcs against the sky, pumping brackish water into a trough for the horses. Christopher knelt, splashing his face, the cool shock pulling a sob from his chest. This land had raised him, taught him its secrets, hidden arroyos where flash floods carved jade pools, slot canyons echoing with raven calls. As a kid, he'd explored them all, mapping them in a battered notebook, dreaming of escape. One secret burned brightest, the Whispering Spring, a seep tucked in a crevice miles out, fed by some forgotten vein of the aquifer. He'd found it at 15, during a solo hike, the water so pure it sang on his tongue. He'd never told a soul, not even Pa. It was his alone, a fragile hope in a world that drank you dry. A shadow fell across the trough. Christopher whipped around, fist clenched, but it was just Ellie, her braids whipping in the wind, eyes red-rimmed under her freckled nose. "Chris? Pa said you was gone for good." She was 12 now, all gangly limbs and fierce loyalty, clutching a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper. He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of hay and childhood. "Hey!" Squirt. "Yeah, well." Pa's got his notions. Her small arms squeezed tight, and for a moment, the world softened. "Tommy told me what happened," said y'all. She trailed off, cheeks flushing. "It's okay, Chris. I love you anyway." Tears stung his eyes. "Love you too. Listen, you gotta promise, don't tell nobody where I go. I'll write when I can." He pressed a crumpled $10 bill into her palm, the last of his savings. She nodded solemnly, then darted back toward the house, a fleeting ghost in the dust. Christopher watched her go, the ranch house squatting low and defiant against the horizon. Harlan's truck was gone, probably at the mine, barking orders to keep the illusion of control. Ma would be inside, wringing her apron, whispering prayers to a God who'd turned deaf. He couldn't stay. Not here, where every fence post whispered judgment. He struck out north, toward the Badlands, the notebook in his pack a talisman against the void. The sun dipped low, painting the mesas in blood orange, and that's when he heard the engine, a low rumble like distant thunder. A dusty Ford pickup crested the rise, slowing as it neared. The driver leaned out, arm draped over the door, a crooked grin splitting his sun-leathered face. "Need a lift, stranger? Look like you've been chewed up and spit out by the devil himself." Christopher hesitated, sizing him up, mid-20s, maybe, with hazel eyes sharp as flint, dark hair curling under a worn Stetson, and a flannel shirt rolled to elbows that spoke of hard labor. Broad shoulders, easy confidence, the kind that drew you in before you knew better. "Name's Anthony," the man said, extending a calloused hand. "Anthony Hale. And yeah, before you ask, that's the Hale. Pastor's boy." "Don't hold it against me." Christopher's gut twisted. Pastor Hale, the fire and brimstone voice thundering from the pulpit every Sunday about abominations and the wages of sin. This was his son, the prodigal who'd skipped town for college in Tucson, only to slink back last month with a business degree and vague talk of revitalizing the town. He climbed in anyway, the cab smelling of leather and sage. Christopher Hayes. Harlan's boy. Anthony's grin faltered. Just a flicker. "Heard about your situation. Small town. You know, folks talk." He shifted into gear, the truck lurching forward. "Where to? Phoenix? Flagstaff? Hell, I could drop you at the border if you're feeling adventurous." "Anywhere but here," Christopher muttered, staring out at the blurring scrub. But as the miles ticked by, Anthony's voice filled the silence. Stories of frat parties gone wrong, a botched internship in LA, the itch to build something real back home. He had plans, solar pumps for the wells, ecotourism to lure outsiders with cash. Juniper Creek's dyin'. Man, droughts got us by the throat. But we adapt or we wither. Christopher snorted. Adapt? Pa says it's God's will. Pray harder. Dig deeper. Anthony laughed, a warm rumble that eased the knot in Christopher's chest. Pa, my old man says the same. But I figure God's got better things to do than ration our H2O. He glanced over, eyes lingering a beat too long. What about you? What's your story? Hayes, the question hung, heavy as the gathering dusk. Christopher could spin a yarn about wanderlust. But something in Anthony's gaze, curious, unguarded, cracked him open. Kicked out, he said flatly. For kissin' the wrong boy. Silence stretched, thick and electric. Then Anthony nodded, slow. Yeah. Wrong in their eyes. Maybe. Not mine. The words landed soft as rain on parched soil. Christopher turned, meeting that hazel stare, and for the first time since the shotgun's echo, he felt seen. Not as a sinner, but as a man. The truck hummed on, carrying them into the twilight, toward whatever fragile tomorrow the desert might spare. As they crested the ridge overlooking Juniper Creek, the town sprawled below like a faded postcard. Adobe houses huddled around the dry riverbed, the steepled church piercing the sky, the mine's skeletal towers glinting in the last light. Anthony killed the engine, letting the quiet settle. Crash at my place tonight. Got a spare room. No strings. Scout's honor. Christopher's pulse quickened. Anthony's place was the old Hale parsonage on Elm Street, a 2-story Victorian with gingerbread trim peeling like old skin. Pastor's domain. Once. Now, with Hale Sr. preaching in Phoenix half the time, echoed empty. Why? Christopher asked, voice rough. You don't know me. Anthony shrugged, that grin flashing again. Call it Christian charity. Or curiosity. Take your pick. He revved the engine, descending into the valley, and Christopher let himself believe, just for a night, in second chances. The parsonage smelled of polished oak and faint incense, a relic of sermons past. Anthony showed him the guest room, threadbare quilt on a brass bed, window framing the star-pricked sky. Showers down the hall. Holler if you need anything. He paused in the doorway, silhouetted, and Christopher caught the flicker of something unspoken. Hunger, maybe, or fear. Thanks, Christopher said, throat tight. Alone, he stripped off his shirt, wincing at the bruises blooming like storm clouds on his ribs. The mirror showed a stranger, hollow-cheeked, eye-shadowed, but alive. He stepped under the spray, hot water sluicing away the dust, and for a moment, he let the grief pour out with it, sobs wrenched from a place he'd armored tight. Downstairs, Anthony paced the kitchen, nursing a lukewarm corpse. He'd seen the bruises when Christopher climbed in the truck, purple blooms peeking from his collar. Rage simmered low, against Harlan Hayes, against the town that chewed up its own, against his father who'd preached tolerance from the pulpit while whispering poison at home. Anthony knew that poison well. Growing up, Hale meant perfection. Straight A's, quarterback glory, a fiancé lined up by senior year. But beneath the all-American facade, he'd wrestled his own secrets. Night's scrolling grinder in hidden browser tabs, the ache for a touch that mirrored his own confusion. Meeting Christopher, it was like staring into a funhouse mirror. Same haunted eyes, same quiet defiance. Anthony poured a second beer, then a third, the alcohol loosening the knot in his gut. When the floorboards creaked upstairs, he climbed, knocking soft on the bathroom door. You good? A beat? Then, yeah. Just thinking. Anthony leaned against the wall, voice low. About tomorrow? About surviving it. The shower shut off, and Christopher emerged in a towel, water beating on his shoulders, steam curling like ghosts. Their eyes locked, the air thickening. Anthony's breath hitched. Christopher was all lean muscle from ranch work, scars from boyhood scrapes, a vulnerability that tugged like a hook. Sorry, Christopher muttered, clutching the towel tighter. Didn't mean to. Don't. Anthony stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him. You're safe here. I promise. The word safe hung between them, a lifeline. Christopher searched his face, seeing not pity, but a mirror of his own longing. Slowly, tentatively, he reached out, fingers brushing Anthony's jaw. The touch ignited, soft at first, then desperate, lips meeting in a crash of need. Anthony's hands framed Christopher's face, thumbs tracing cheekbones, the kiss deepening with the salt of unshed tears. They stumbled back into the bedroom, towels discarded, bodies tangling in a frenzy of rediscovery. Skin on skin, gasps echoing in the dim light. It wasn't just sex, it was salvation. Anthony traced the bruises with reverent fingers, whispering apologies for a world that marked them. Christopher arched under him, whispering back promises neither could keep. In the afterglow, they lay entwined, Anthony's head on Christopher's chest, listening to the steady thrum of a heart that beat for him. Dawn crept in rosy-fingered, and with it, reality. Anthony brewed coffee strong as tar, handing Christopher a mug on the porch swing. So, what's the plan? You leavin'? Christopher sipped, staring at the waking town. Kids bicycled to school, ranchers loaded feed into trucks. Normalcy, mocking him. Got no plan. Just away. Anthony nodded, jaw tight. Stay. Help me with the project. I'm drillin' test wells next week. See if we can tap deeper. Town's huttin'. Folks are rationing already, and summer's barely started. Christopher laughed, bitter. Me, the queer haze kid? They'd string me up before I touched a shovel. Not if you're with me. Anthony's eyes burned earnest. I'm the golden boy. Remember, pastor's son. We keep it quiet, work the edges. And whatever this is, he gestured between them, we figure it out slow. The offer dangled, tempting as oasis water. Christopher thought of Ellie, of the spring's secret humming in his veins. Maybe he could give back, on his terms. All right. But if it goes south, it won't. Anthony sealed it with a kiss, fierce and sure, under the watchful eyes of the rising sun. The next 2 weeks blurred into a rhythm of sweat and secrecy. By day, they worked the Badlands. Anthony's crew a ragtag bunch of local skeptical but desperate. Old-timers like Gus from the mine, young bucks chasing overtime. Christopher kept his head down, calling himself Chris Harlan on the payroll, his hands blistered from hauling pipe, his back aching from wrestling solar panels into place. Anthony directed with easy authority, barking orders laced with jokes that eased the tension. His Stetson tipped back to reveal sweat-slicked curls. Stolen glances across the site, Anthony's wink over a blueprint, Christopher's brush of fingers when passing tools, kept the fire banked but burning. Nights were theirs. The parsonage became a sanctuary, curtains drawn against prying eyes. They'd cook haphazard meals, chili from cans, cornbread baked crooked, then lose themselves in each other, exploring with a tenderness that scared them both. Anthony confessed over midnight beers, the pressure of his father's legacy. The fiancée, Sarah, from high school, now married to a dentist in Tempe, who'd been a beard more than a flame. I tried, Chris. God, I tried. But it was like wearing someone else's skin. Christopher shared his own ghosts, the notebook of maps, the Springs location etched like a tattoo on his soul. Found it runnin' from Pa after my first crush. Kid named Jamie. Moved away before it meant anything. That water. It's pure. Anthony. Enough for a dozen families. Maybe more if we rig it right. Anthony's eyes lit. Practical mind spinning. Why hide it? Town's thirstier than a sinner in church. 'Cause it's mine, Christopher said simply. Only thing I got left that's not tainted. Anthony pulled him close, kissing the words away. Not anymore. We're in this. Yeah. You and me. Yeah. Christopher breathed, believing it. But Juniper Creek's underbelly churned. Whispers followed Christopher like shadows, Harlan at the roadhouse, nursing whiskeys, growling about that boy's shame. Pastor Hale, back for a revival weekend, thundered from the pulpit. The land withers as our morals do. Repent, or the Lord will dry us to dust. His eyes swept the congregation, lingering on Anthony in the front pew, a silent accusation. Tommy Ruiz cornered Christopher one evening at the site, as the crew packed up. Heard you're shacked up with the preacher's kid. Ballsy. Hayes. But watch your back. Hale's got eyes everywhere. Christopher shrugged, wiping grit from his hands. Mind your own. Tommy. Tommy's grin twisted. Just sayin'. Town don't forget. That night, as Anthony mapped the next drill site, Christopher's phone buzzed. A burner Anthony had slipped him. Text from Ellie, Pa's mad. Says you're ruinin' us. Come home? His chest tightened. He showed Anthony, who cursed soft. Harlan's poison. Ignore it. But ignoring wasn't easy. The drought bit deeper, wells sputtering brown, cattle thinning to ribs and hide. Ration lines snaked from the community center, Mayor Wilkins pleading for federal aid that never came. Anthony's project bought time, solar pumps humming where old ones failed, but it was band-aids on a hemorrhage. Then came the storm, or what passed for one in July. Monsoon clouds boiled over the superstitions, dumping sheets of rain that turned arroyos to rivers overnight. The crew celebrated with lukewarm beers, but Christopher felt the earth's thirst slake unevenly, the spring in his mind pulsing like a vein. In the downpour's wake, Anthony dragged him to the ridge overlooking town, slickers flapping. Look at that, he said, arm around Christopher's waist. The creek bed ran muddy brown for the first time in years, a fleeting miracle. Christopher leaned into him, rain mingling with tears he didn't bother hiding. Feels like hope. Anthony turned him, kissing deep and slow, hands roaming under wet flannel. You are hope, Chris. Don't you forget. They made love in the truck bed under the clearing sky, urgent and reverent, the desert blooming around them in riotous color, prickly pear bursting pink, Ocotillo waving scarlet flags. It was a vow, unspoken, against the town, the drought, the dark. August scorched in like a furnace, evaporating the gains. Anthony's drills struck gravel, then nothing, dry holes mocking their efforts. Tempers frayed. Gus quit, muttering about curses. Christopher worked longer, mapping side canyons by headlamp, the notebook his Bible. One night, alone in the Badlands, he hiked to the spring, kneeling to drink. The water was cool, eternal, a secret lover's gift. Soon, he promised it. Soon, we'll share you. Back at the parsonage, Anthony waited with takeout from Lupe's, enchiladas steaming, a six-pack chilling. But his face was drawn, eyes evading. Talk to Dad today. He's comin' back permanent. Wants me in the family business revival circuit. Not this fool's errand with the pumps. Christopher's fork stilled. And, Anthony sighed, running a hand through his hair. I told him no. But he's got pull. Mayor listens to him. If he pushes, the project's dead. Then we fight. Christopher reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Together, Anthony's smile was ghost-thin. Together, that fragile pact held through the heat's nadir. They stole weekends away, driving to Sedona, hiking vortex trails where red rock hummed with ancient energy. In a slot canyon, sunlight slanting gold, Anthony dropped to one knee. Not proposal, but promise, offering a braided leather bracelet from a Navajo stall. For luck, he said, fastening it on Christopher's wrist. And for us, Christopher pulled him up, kissing until breath failed. Love you, he whispered, the words escaping like prisoners. Anthony froze, then crushed him close. Christ, Chris. Love you too. Been waitin' to hear that. They laughed through tears, the canyon walls echoing their joy. For a stolen afternoon, the world was theirs, two men carving space in stone. But secrets fester. Tommy Ruiz, nursing a grudge or maybe jealousy, started talking. Sighted Christopher leaving the parsonage at dawn. Pieced the puzzle. At the roadhouse, over pool cues and pitchers, he spilled, Hale's boys bend in the same way. Town's own Judas. Word reached Harlan first. He stormed the mine site at shift's end, face thunderous, confronting Anthony amid the idling trucks. You corruptin' my boy? Poisonin' him worse than before. Anthony stood tall, chin lifted. Harlan, this ain't about that. We're tryin' to save the town. Save it for what? So you queers can prance while we thirst. Harlan's spittle flew, fists balled. Crew watched, uneasy. Christopher, hauling gear from the truck, froze at the roar. Pa's eyes locked on him, betrayal raw. You slunk back here? After I ran you off. Pa! Christopher stepped forward, voice cracking. Shut your mouth. Harlan lunged, but Anthony blocked, shoving him back. Enough. He's workin'. Same as us. Harlan laughed. Ugly. Workin'. That's rich. Pastor's boys gone native, gone queer. He spat at Christopher's boots, turning to the crew. You hearin' this? Our water savior's a sodomite. Murmurs rippled. Gus shook his head. Others shifted, eyes hard. Anthony's face paled, but he held ground. Get off my sight, Harlan. Or I'll call the sheriff. Harlan sneered, backing to his truck. Call him. Tell him how you're ruinin' good Christian boys. Engine roared, tires spinning dust as he fled. The crew dispersed silent, the air poisoned. Christopher sagged against the truck, Anthony's arm around him a lifeline. It's out, he whispered. Not over, Anthony said, fierce. We finished the job, but the fracture spread. Pastor Hale returned like a storm front, sermons laced with venom. Sodom rises in our midst. The drought is judgment. Cleanse or perish. Altar calls swelled. Donations poured for moral renewal, siphoned from well funds. Mayor Wilkins, spineless as ever, pulled Anthony's budget mid-drill. Politics, son. Your pa's got the ear of the flock. Anthony raged in the parsonage kitchen, slamming cabinets. It's bullshit. We're inches from a vein. Christopher pulled him down, hands steadying. The spring. We use it. Tell him. No. Anthony's eyes flashed. That's yours. Our ace. But desperation clawed. September's heat wave cracked lips and tempers. A child's fever from tainted water sparked quarantine fears. Ellie snuck over one twilight, slipping through the backyard hedge. Pa's sellin' the ranch. Says we're cursed 'cause of you. Her eyes pleaded. Fix it, Chris. Please. He hugged her fierce, the bracelet on his wrist a talisman. I will. Promise. That night, as Anthony slept, Christopher slipped out, notebook in hand. Dawn found him at the church, sliding an anonymous map under the office door, the spring's coordinates, marked for the children. A gift, and signed, to ease the ache. Morning brought chaos. Pastor Hale burst into the community meeting, map aloft. A miracle, the Lord provides, through repentance. I scanned the room, landing accusatory on Anthony. But who delivered this? Penitent soul? Or a deceiver? Murmurs swelled. Harlan stood, voice booming. I know who. My own blood tainted, but blood. All eyes turned to Christopher, slipping in late. He froze, exposed. Anthony half rose, but Christopher shook his head. Let me. Pa's right, he said, voice steady. I found it years ago. Kept it 'cause. Well, folks like me don't get to give without talking. He met Hale's gaze. But the kids are dying. Use it. Silence crashed. Then erupted gratitude, suspicion, outright hate. Harlan's face twisted. You think this buys forgiveness? You're dead to us. Pastor Hale raised a hand, silencing. The boy offers salvation. We accept. Conditionally. Labor for the town. Prove your worth. And perhaps the Lord forgives. Anthony's hand found Christopher's under the table, squeezing. A chance? Or a trap? They broke ground at the spring 2 days later, under blistering sun. Crew worked wary, Anthony directing, Christopher hauling rock to line the pool. Ellie cheered from the sidelines, waving a handmade sign. Big Bro saves the day. By dusk, water flowed clear, cold, filling barrels for the ration line. Cheers rose, tentative then thunderous. Folks lined up, dipping cups, tears mixing with sips. Bless you, Chris, Lupe murmured, pressing tamales into his hands. Even Harlan appeared at twilight, Ellie tugging his sleeve. He stood apart, arms crossed, but his nod was grudging. Water's good. Don't make it right, Christopher nodded back. Didn't ask for right. Just for livin'. As stars wheeled overhead, Anthony pulled him aside, into the crevice's shadow. You did it. We did. Their kiss was salt and sweet, the spring's murmur a hymn. But in the crowd, Tommy watched, eyes narrow, phone in hand, snapping the moment, a betrayal brewing. October's chill nipped at the heels of relief. the spring a lifeline snaking through Juniper Creek via jury-rigged pipes. Anthony's solar pumps hummed in tandem, a fragile grid sustaining homes, herds, the school cafeteria. Town meetings shifted from despair to debate. How to expand? Who pays? Pastor Hale claimed credit from the pulpit. Divine intervention through humble vessels. But his eyes on Christopher held a serpent's gleam, watchful. The romance deepened in stolen breaths. Mornings, coffee on the parsonage porch. Anthony's head on Christopher's lap as they plotted futures. Maybe a cabin in the hills, solar-powered, off-grid. No more hidin', Anthony murmured, fingers tracing the bracelet. Proud, out loud, Christopher smiled, but doubt gnawed. Pride was a luxury, survival, a gamble. Still, love armored him. They volunteered at the Springs distribution, side by side, handing out jugs to grateful faces. Old Mrs. Delgado pressed a rosary into his palm. God's got a plan for you. Mijo. Kids splashed in the overflow pool. Ellie among them, shrieking with joy. Harlan thawed. Inchmeal. He'd show at the site, gruffly offering tools, avoiding Christopher's eyes. One evening, as pipes clanged into place, he grunted, "Water's holdin'. Reckon you did all right. No apology, but it was close." Tommy Ruiz lurked at the edges, a specter. Christopher caught him staring at the roadhouse, nursing a shot, conversation halting as he entered. "Buy you one," Christopher offered. "Olive branch." Tommy's laugh was sharp. "Generous, Hayes." After stealin', the preacher's boy, jealousy twisted his features. Christopher saw it now. The kiss behind the feed store a spark unquenched. "Ain't stealin'." Anthony chooses. Christopher sipped his beer. Steady. "We good." Tommy leaned in, breath sour. "Good as dead. If your pa finds out you're still sniffing around." The threat hung, but Christopher walked away, heart pounding. He told Anthony that night, tangled in sheets. Tommy's trouble. Anthony's jaw clenched. Let him talk. We've got the town now, but talk metastasized. Pastor Hale summoned Anthony to the study, Bible thumping on oak desk. Rumors, son. Unnatural ones. With him, his voice dripped disappointment, eyes boring like augers. Anthony met it head on. Not rumors, Dad. Truth. I love him. Hale's face drained white. Love? Blasphemy. You'll end this, or I'll end your folly here. Anthony stormed out, slamming the door that had echoed his childhood catechism. He found Christopher at the spring, moonlight silvering the water. Told him. All of it. Christopher pulled him close, heart swelling. Proud of you. They made love by the pool's edge. Water lapping gentle. Stars witnesses. It was consecration, bodies and souls bared. No shadows. November whispered in on cottonwood leaves. Gold and fleeting. The aquifer stabilized. Rains teasing the horizon. Anthony proposed formally over Thanksgiving leftovers. Turkey cold. Ring a simple silver band scavenged from Tucson. Marry me, Chris. Not legal here. Not yet, but ours. Tears blurred Christopher's vision. Yes. God. Yes. Ellie squealed when told, plotting a desert wedding with wildflowers and guitars. Even Ma softened, slipping pies to the parsonage door. Notes tucked inside proud. In my way. but betrayal brewed in the margins. Tommy, spurned and seething, met Harlan at the mine's shadowed mouth. Saw him. Hayes. Your boy and Hales, touchin', kissin' like animals. Got proof. He flashed his phone. Grainy shots from the crevice. Silhouettes entwined. Unmistakable. Harlan's face hardened to flint. What you want? Justice, Tommy sneered. Or a cut of whatever glory they're chasin', greed and grudge aligned. Harlan pocketed the phone, nodding. Leave it to me. The sabotage struck subtle. A valve tampered at the spring's head, sand clogging the flow overnight. Morning brought panic. Water trickled brown, then stopped. Crew scrambled, Anthony cursing as he dove in, wrench flashing. Sabotage, he growled, pulling debris. Who the hell? Christopher's gut twisted. Harlan's truck idled nearby, Pa watching from afar, face blank. But proof? None. Pastor Hale seized the moment. Emergency service swelling the church. The devil tests us. The spring was a gift, revoked by sin in our ranks. Whispers pointed. The queer, the outsider. Eyes turned accusatory on Christopher, even as he'd saved them. Anthony defended fierce. It's vandalism, not curses. We're fixin' it. Hale's hand clamped his shoulder. Quiet, boy. Or join the sinners. That night, Harlan cornered Christopher at the ranch fence. Shotgun loose in his grip, not aimed, but thread enough. Knew you'd poison it all. Town's sufferin' again. You're doin' to, Pa. No, Christopher's voice broke. I fixed it once. Let me. You. Harlan's laugh barked. You're the curse. Pack up. Leave Anthony too, or I'll tell the pastor everything. Ruin him like you ruined us. The ultimatum crushed. Christopher stumbled home, no. To the parsonage, face ashen. Anthony took one look and pulled him inside. Door barred. What, Pa? Says he'll destroy you. The project. Your family, everything. Tears carve tracks. I gotta go. Tonight. Anthony's world tilted. No. We face it. Face what? Hate? I've seen it. Christopher cupped his face. Memorizing. The crinkle at his eyes. The scar on his lip from a boyhood fall. Love you too much to drag you under. Anthony kissed him desperate. Hands fisting shirt. Then we run. Together. Tucson. Anywhere. But dawn brought the mob. Pastor Hale, riled by Tommy's evidence, leaked to the flock. Led a procession to the parsonage, torches flickering for light. They claimed. Voices chanting psalms twisted to anthems of expulsion. Harlan at the fore. Shotgun high. Out. Abominations. Hale bellowed. Windows rattled. Ellie wept from the ranch porch, Ma holding her back. Anthony barred the door. Christopher behind. Panic clawing. Fight or flight? Flight. Anthony grabbed Pax. Keys. They slipped out the back. Into the truck. Engine roaring to life. Tires spun gravel as they fled. The mob's roar fading. But betrayal's blade twisted deeper. At the ridge, Anthony's phone buzzed. Hale Sr., turn back. Confess. Repent. Or you're no son of mine. Anthony hurled it into the dark. Tears hot. Fuck him. We're free. Christopher clung to him, the desert blurring past. Free or fugitives? The spring's secret, half revealed, mocked from afar, water flowing again. They'd hear later, the sabotage a feint. But trust? Shattered. They holed up in a Flagstaff motel, neon buzzing like doubt. Anthony paced, rage boiling. Tommy. Had to be. That photo. How else? Christopher nodded. Hollow. Pa bought it. For the town. Silence festered. Anthony stopped. Eyes searching. You thinkin' of going back? Fixin' it alone? The question gutted. Christopher wanted to deny, but the pull Ellie, Ma. The water's promise tugged relentless. Maybe. If it saves them. Anthony's face crumpled. Saves them? After this. He grabbed the bracelet, yanking it free. Go. Then. But don't expect me waitin'. The slap of leather on wood echoed the shotgun's ghost. Christopher recoiled, world fracturing. Anthony. Out. Voice steel. Before you break me too. Door slammed. Christopher stumbled into the night, heart a wasteland. Betrayed by blood, now by love. The road called, endless. December dusted the Badlands in rare frost, the spring a frozen vein pulsing brown. Juniper Creek teetered, ration lines doubled, fevers spiking in shantytowns of displaced ranchers. News trickled via radio. Feds promised aid, but bureaucracy lagged like a lame horse. Pastor Hale's revivals packed tents. Miracles peddled for tithes. Repent, and waters flow. Christopher hitchhiked south. A ghost in his own skin. The bracelet's absence a phantom itch. Flagstaff to Phoenix. Then east on I-10. Thumb out to any rig that didn't recoil. Truckers spun yarns of better lands. California's coast. Where fruits hung heavy and men loved open, but Christopher's compass pointed home. Not for forgiveness, but for Ellie. For the promise whispered to stone. Phoenix's sprawl swallowed him 3 days. Shelter bunks reeking of despair. Day labor hauling crates for pennies. Nights, he pored over the notebook by sodium light, tracing routes back. Tommy's betrayal burned. A kiss turned Judas coin. But Harlan, Pa's shotgun, once protector, now executioner. Love's calculus. How much for survival? Christmas Eve found him in a Greyhound depot, stale coffee curdling his gut. When Ellie's face flashed on a grainy TV local news, drought diary segment. Hollow-cheeked, clutching a doll, she spoke to a mic. Miss my brother. He fixed the water once. Wish he'd come back. Cut to Harlan. Stone-faced. Family matters private. Town's prayin'. Christopher's resolve cracked. He bought a ticket west. The bus rumbling through starless night. Dawn broke over the superstitions. Mesas etched gold. Juniper Creek huddled below. Smoke curling thin from chimneys rationing wood. He slipped in unseen, dusk cloaking his approach to the ranch. Ma met him at the kitchen door, apron dusted flour, eyes welling. Boy, she pulled him inside, hug fierce despite the tremor. Ma. He buried his face in her shoulder, scent of yeast and regret. Harlan was out my night shift. Ellie barreled in, launching into his arms. Chris, said you'd come. She chattered of school plays, the spring stutter, Pa's silences. Supper was quiet. Venison stew stretched thin, cornbread crumbly. Ma's questions gentle. That Hale boy? Gone, Christopher said, fork scraping plate. Truth half-spoken. Harlan returned late, boots thudding hall. Door creaked. Silence fell like snow. He filled the frame, eyes narrowing. You, Pa. Christopher rose, steady. For Ellie. Not you. Harlan's gaze flicked. Anger, then flicker of something raw. Town's dying again. You're doin'. Stirrin' sin. No. Christopher stepped closer, voice low. Sabotage was. Tommy's photos. Your threats. Harlan flinched. Guilt cracking facade. Had to protect. Protect what? Hate. Tears hot. I loved you, Pa. Still do. But this. He gestured the room. The land beyond. Ain't protection. It's fear. Harlan sagged into a chair, face crumpling. Feared for you, boy. World chews queers like gristle. Thought running you off. Saved you. The confession hung. A bridge or a noose. Christopher knelt, hand on Pa's knee, first touch in months. World chews everyone. But love, that's the water. Keeps us going. Harlan's hand covered his, rough, trembling. No words, but absolution in the grip. Word spread by morning Christopher home, the prodigal unstunned. Pastor Hale's service swelled. Anthony slipped in back pew, drawn by rumor, heart a war zone. Seeing Christopher beside Ellie, Harlan's arm loose around his shoulders, it twisted like barbed wire. The bracelet dangled from Anthony's pocket, a talisman of what-ifs. Hale's sermon veered. Even wayward sons return, but repentance demands sacrifice. Postlude prayer singled Christopher. Lord, cleanse this vessel. Use him for your flow. After Anthony lingered in the narthex, crowd ebbing. Christopher emerged, eyes widening. You couldn't stay away. Anthony's voice rough, hazel eyes stormy. Heard about the welcome. Harlan's doin'? Christopher nodded, throat tight. Talked. Real talk. Anthony's laugh was hollow. Lucky you. He turned to go, but Christopher grabbed his wrist, the empty one. Bracelet's ghost. Wait. Please. Voice breaking. I was wrong. Runnin'. It broke us. But I see now, you are my home. Anthony searched his face. Walls cracking. Broke me, Chris. Thought you chose them. Chose survival. For all of us. Christopher pulled the notebook. Pages splayed. This? It's more than water. It's maps to veins, hidden flows, untapped. We build together. No hidin'. Anthony's breath hitched. We, you and me. Town be damned. The kiss was tentative, church steps be damned. Then fierce, reclaiming. Cheers erupted from shadows. Ellie, Ma, even Gus with a flask raised. Harlan watched from the door, gnawed grudging but there. Rebuilding ignited. Christopher and Anthony mapped the aquifer's web, drills striking sweet in forgotten canyons. Crew swelled. Tommy slunk away, shamed, his photos ashes in a bonfire of renewal. Pastor Hale railed, but flock thinned. Hale Sr. softened, cornered by Anthony over coffee. Loves the miracle that, not hate. January thawed to miracle rains. Spring swelling fat. The town bloomed, gardens greening, cattle fattening. Christopher and Anthony's wedding was desert simple. Vows under cottonwoods. Ellie flower girl. Harlan best man. Ma's pie for cake. No rings exchanged yet, but promises sealed in water's flow. Climax crested mid-February. aquifer groaning under unseasonal gully washer. Flash flood roared down arroyos, slamming the spring's headwall. Alarms wailed. Christopher and Anthony raced creviceward, crew trailing. Water surged biblical, threatening breach, town downstream, Ellie at school. Reinforce, Anthony yelled, ropes whipping, sandbags heaving. But the wall buckled, torrent clawing. Christopher saw it, the crevice's throat, a side vein exposed. There, divert it, he dove in, waist deep, wrench prying stone. Anthony beside, hands linked. Together, flood raged, but they held muscle and will, love's leverage. Vein opened, water split, raging harmless to the dry wash. Crew cheered as it ebbed, spring intact, stronger. Soaked, bruised, they collapsed laughing, Anthony's head on Christopher's chest. Key to survival, he murmured. You, Christopher kissed his temple. Us. Harlan arrived late, surveying the save. He clapped Christopher's shoulder, voice gruff, proud, son. Damn proud. Pastor Hale conceded at town hall, voice humbled, not my will. His and yours. Aid flowed federal, but credit stayed local, 2 men, unbreakable. Spring unfurled verdant, Juniper Creek a testament. Scars faded, but stories etched. Christopher and Anthony built their cabin on the ridge, solar lights winking, spring's murmur lullaby. Ellie visited Sundays, Ma baked, Harlan whittled toys on the porch. Love, they learned, wasn't absence of storm, but dancing in it, drenched and defiant. In America's heartland dust, 2 souls quenched a thirst deeper than earth, for belonging, unashamed. Years later, Anthony would trace Christopher's laugh lines, whispering, kicked out, but never down. We rose, and Christopher, bracelet refastened, would smile, water finds its level. So did we.